Hey, I'm back again. The look might be familiar on the double record day, but the Cleveland Guardians lost today to the Chicago White Sox. White Sox wanted to make a statement, and they certainly did in this game. It was an ugly loss. If you're a White Sox fan, you have to feel pretty happy right now. If you're a Guardians fan, significantly less so. We're going to talk about this game. We're going to preview the Minnesota matchup and get into a few bits of news on today's episode of Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Locked On Guardians. Today's show is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. As I stated, I'm Jeff Ellis, the host of Locked On Guardians, as I have been for near 800 of these episodes. Before that, I was a lead draft and prospect analyst at Scout 24/7, and before that, I wrote for many a Cleveland sports blog. I want to thank you for making Locked On Guardians your first listen today and every day, wherever it is you get podcasts. I do want to say, paperwork's been signed. New co-host is coming. There's been a little confusion. I'm not going anywhere. It just gives me a chance to take some time off doing a daily podcast. I mean, even in the off season, it's 3 days a week. I've taken like maybe 2-3 weeks off. And I know there's plenty of people being like, you just talk. Well, you have to line up what you're going to talk about. You have to write up what you're going to talk about. You have to then email multiple people. You have to go through and do some editing checks. There's a lot of things. If it was just showing up and talking, I probably wouldn't have needed a co-host. But having someone else take a little bit of the weight off is going to be nice. And that'll be I'm going to wait. I'm going to let that person announce it themselves. I'm not going to steal their thunder. So you can stay tuned for that. In terms of the game today, so listen, Elvis Andrus looked clairvoyant. Now he's going to be a folk hero in Chicago instead of being, someone we can call like, what a dumb move. He gets to look like a hero. It's going to be interesting to see how if his future is in Chicago, like, do they make an attempt to keep him at all? And not just because of this one game, but he's been relatively effective for them after being largely ineffective for Oakland. And I mean, even Texas, he's not. He is a player that got that contract very young, and it felt like he was always a slight disappointment in my mind. Does anyone else feel like that? Except for facing the Guardians. He's always feasted. It was a rough day for Hunter Gaddis. Another rough start. He's had 2 starts. Both times he's gotten lit up. And it's this time 4 innings, 8 hits, 7 earned runs, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts, 5 home runs. He had 8 hits. 5 of them were home runs. Everyone was just Gavin Sheets, Andrew Vaughn, Yohan Moncada, Yasmani Grandal, and Elvis Andrus all went yard on him, and that's pretty much all she wrote. Cleveland got 1 run in the second. By that point, they were, by the 5th inning, they were down 8-1. They get another one in the 7th, and then the White Sox get another one late. It was rough. It was a game that got out of hand. It was a game where the pitching crumbled and the offense didn't really show up. Cleveland managed 9 hits in this one and 1 walk in the game. There was the 1 error on Yasmani Grandal, so that should be about 11 runs. That's 11 base runners. That should be about 3 runs, maybe a little less, maybe 2, which is a little less than 3, obviously. But they got 2. They just couldn't seem to swing anything, get a whole bunch of stuff together. Who reached base multiple times. Rosario had 2 hits. It's nice because before that, he was getting dangerously close to his OPS, dropping below 700. Benson had 2 hits, which was also nice for a guy who's been struggling. And then Straw with 3 hits. Don't look now. Batting average is up over 210. Straw is showing, again, signs of life. And, I get it. Not showing signs of life of late has been Stephen Kwan. It's been rough. When Amed was really in that bad stretch back against Seattle, and we were kind of pointing it out, we got to point out the guy who's not seeing the ball well at all now, the guy who's not playing well at all now is Stephen Kwan. He is just not performing very well, and the guy at the top of your lineup. Do you change it? No. He's done too much this year. You assume he's going to turn it around. The bigger problem, it's like Rosario had the 2 hits, and then you've got Kwan, Jose, and Naylor are combined 0 for 12 with 1 walk. Listen, with the way the pitching went, they probably weren't going to win this one. So you could just, we don't need to bury anyone. Shaw went out, hitting a walk, 2 strikeouts, getting closer to that big bonus. Eli Morgan. This is maybe one of the best parts of this game for me. Eli Morgan was their best reliever for about 3 months. If he can get even back to like 80% of where he was, and we did a whole piece on him where he kind of like, what's wrong with Eli Morgan? And it felt like confidence. Listen, he was extremely lucky in the first half. He was extremely unlucky in the second half. But seeing him on the mound, it just looked at points like he was not the same confident player. 2 innings, 1 hit, 2 strikeouts. That's great. If you can get him, again, back to 80% of where he was, how much deadlier does a already deadly bullpen get? Like, they might have the best. And it kind of makes me wonder, too, when you're looking at guys like 90. Listen, they gave Clase the extension, so he's not going anywhere. But if you got 99, you got Trevor Stephan, you got Nick Sandlin. If Morgan rebounds, do they look to move a reliever? Is that what they can maybe do? I talked about last offseason. It's like if Miami, which felt like maybe they'd have an extra bat. I was talking about Gary Cooper at the time. I'd have to go look and see how he's played this year. It's like maybe a reliever is actually one of their best trade assets to try and upgrade this team. But signs of life from Eli Morgan are huge. Kirk McCarty, he gave up the run in the 9th with 3 hits. I would be surprised if he's on the 40-man at the end of the year. Let's just be honest about that. Not a knock on him. He's a useful player. He is a quad A depth guy. He is great in that type of role. But I think that is probably his role going forward. They might lose him again at some point on a waiver claim. But I think that he is, that's his best role. Let me know what you think on that. 3 stars for this one. I think you have to go through. Amed and Benson each had 2 hits. And they also had the only extra base hits. Those are very clearly 2 of your 3 stars. And then the last one is Straw versus Morgan. And, 3 hits. He led the team in reaching base. I have to give it to Myles Straw over Eli Morgan in this one. But I think you give it to those 3 offensive players. How can you give it to 3 offensive players? This team scored 2 runs. Well, here's kind of the problem. Rosario had 2 hits. 2 guys directly after him, Ramirez and Naylor, went 0 for 4. 2 hits for Benson. So, let's talk Myles Straw. So, I thought it was interesting to go look at his data, just month by month. We can go back to that March, April, where he was really good. May, poor. June, terrible. July actually had a 95 runs created plus. 678 OPS. August was his worst month. August he was just a dying dog. Negative 46. His OPS was a 222. That's a bad batting average on an OPS. So far in September/October, he's up to an 86, a 644 OPS. You're hoping like an 86 in 95 are obtainable and something he can do. Like if he can really kind of more play that way, it just completely changes the outlook for him. And that's kind of, I think, what they thought he was going to be when they went out of the way to acquire him. And if you're like, hey, those aren't inspiring numbers, why are you so low on Amed, who's kind of who does more than that, who's in the high 90s, who is more of that 97 type? Okay, it's because of the defense. If Amed could play defense like Straw and hit like this, he'd be on Andrelton Simmons, and I would be okay with it. He's not. Like, I need a plus trait. Like, that's essentially what it comes down to. And he's got plus speed, but Amed also has plus speed. I need a few plus traits to really dig in, and that's why I'm kind of a little more excited about the potential turnaround. Also because, center field is very hard to find. I remember talking with, why am I blanking on? Joe Doyle, who works at, Prospects Live, and he's a Mariners guy originally, and he was talking about like trying to figure out a Myles Straw trade in the offseason. Teams need center fielders. It is a hard position to find and fill. There are not a lot of good ones. I would argue after catcher and shortstop, it's actually the hardest position. So if you can get a guy who, with his defense, he might be the best defensive center fielder in baseball now. And then you put Steve Kwan in left field. Like, Steven Kwan can handle center, But in left field, you have two. All of a sudden, you have 2+ defenders. And also, like, how crazy is it that, like, Myles Straw has 22, I want to say, outfield assists, and the next closest guy has 14? Like, it's rare that it's a center fielder. Often it's, the guys in the corners who have the arms to get that done. So he brings so much defensively. I just give me slightly below average. So it's very positive to see that jump, the positive performance from him. I spent a lot of time kind of harping on that bad stretch with Seattle. Let's go the other way in terms of how this team is playing. So that terrible stretch, I was talking about performance. How about since then? It's only been 10 games, smallest of sample sizes, but since that Seattle series, from September 10th or September 5th to September 15th, Oscar Gonzalez has a 277 runs created plus. It's one of the single greatest I've ever seen. A 444 ISO, all 4 home runs in the last 10 days. He's got 9 on the year, 4 in a week and a half. Go down, Jose Ramirez a 143, Jimenez a 135, Kwan a 118. So for all of his scuffling, it's still not like it's a terrible 10 days. I feel like maybe I'm just seeing an echo chamber online, and it might not be true. Owen Miller a 111, Myles Straw a 111, Hedges a 77, and Amed a 70. That's, I believe, with today's game counted in. So it's been a rough stretch for Amed. Like, he is scuffling quite a bit. We'll see what goes, but yeah, this is where I'm kind of excited as a Guardians fan that so much of the offense is clicking. Now, if you want to be a pessimist, you'd be like, yeah, and during that time they had the Angels and the Royals, who will both pick in the top 10 for, the Angels technically in the top 10. If they weren't this year, they were adjacent. Like, those are two teams that have essentially been living in the top 10 of the draft. And instead, Cleveland's got 5 against the Twins in 4 days, 3 against the White Sox. Then you got the Rangers, who are struggling. An off day on the 26th, 3 against Tampa. It's another tough team who is going to be fighting for their playoff lives and position. Then you got the Royals to, I believe, finish it up, right? And that's kind of the Guardian superpower in terms of this race. So yes, they have a 3-game lead right now. And they just had a really cruddy loss to the White Sox. Again, family-friendly show. Can't use the words I want to use, but it was a terrible game. They have 3 more against the White Sox this year. They have this 5 against the Twins, and then it's Texas, who's not good, Tampa, and then ending for 6 against the Kansas City Royals, right? Yeah, 6 games in a row against the Royals to end the year. Huge, absolutely huge to end with the Royals. Talked about they're not as bad as they were. They're still not good. On the other side of things, we talked that the White Sox have Detroit, while their other games. So for the White Sox, they have the hardest route in my mind to this, because yes, they have Detroit this weekend, then they have Cleveland, then they have Detroit, but then they have the Twins, Padres, Twins. So they're going to end with teams trying to compete. On the other side of things, the Twins, they have Cleveland, then they have Kansas City and Los Angeles Angels, 2 teams we know not the best. Then they have the White Sox, then it's the Tigers, then it's the White Sox. So while Cleveland is facing Kansas City, the Twins and White Sox are going to be playing each other while fighting for the division. That's part of the reason why Cleveland should be viewed as favorites, on top of having a 3-game lead. But if you didn't realize that was coming up, I mean, does that make you feel better right now, knowing that they're going to have to go head-to-head while Cleveland gets Kansas City? Additionally, I went and looked it up. If I did my adding right, Cleveland is currently up 2 games on the White Sox in head-to-head this year. So with the 3-game series next week, if Cleveland takes 2 out of 3, then it is essentially a bonus game in the division up, a bonus half game. If it's a tie, I would need to go look and see what the next level of tiebreaker is. But yeah, if they can take 2 out of 3 from the White Sox next week, that's pretty much all she wrote, in my opinion, for this division. They need to play well against the Twins, but if they can take 2 out of 3 in Chicago, it's going to be huge. Gives them such an advantage. Now, if they lose 2 out of 3, then it's essentially like losing half a game on them. So they need to take care of business, because it just opens up so much after this. We're going to take break number 2, come back, talk about the Anthony Ghost news on today's episode of Locked On Guardians. So if you missed it, Anthony Ghost had Tommy John surgery yesterday. He is 32 years of age. He will miss his age 33 season, and essentially he's hoping to come back before he turns 34. What's it mean for him? Well, he's currently on the 60-day disabled list, and he'll stay there till the end of the year. It's a great story for him that as this, hitter, he went through the minors and the majors, got to the big leagues, was a big, athlete type, but then struggled and had to go back and kind of reprove himself as a different hitter. And he debuted in 2012 with the Blue Jays, played for them for parts of 3 years and was with the Tigers, and had a career 656 OPS and 82 OPS plus. I mean, that we're hoping for an 82 OPS plus for Myles Straw, right? Like that's the dream. He wasn't a bad hitter. There was some ups and downs and some stuff all around the game where, I remember when he got demoted, it was not the best look, but he struggled as a hitter and then decided to come back as a pitcher, and that was from 2012 to 2016. Comes back last year after 5 years away in 2021. He was with the team this year. Total so far as a pitcher, 27 2/3 innings, an ERA plus of 104. Strikeouts per 9 of 12, walks per 9 of 5.2, home runs per 9 of 1.3. His FIP of 4.18, perfectly respectable. Problem is his age. Let's be honest. And what's going to happen is he'll get to the end of the year, and since he's on the 60-day disabled list, at the end of the year, you can't have anyone on the 60-day disabled list. Right now, he doesn't count against the 40-man. You only have that during the season. He will be released. They will offer him a minor league contract. He can come back and join the team. I don't know, I don't imagine, unless they want to do him a huge favor, they would put him on the 60-day DL once the season began next year. He might decide that, hey, Cleveland's bullpen all of a sudden looks pretty good. I can maybe have a better opportunity somewhere else. He might decide not to come back, but I think there is no way he gets re-rostered now. I don't see any pathway to it. As a player who's going to miss his age 33 year, he's a fantastic story, but it's probably the end of the line for him, at least in terms of Cleveland, in the near or immediate. Well, I guess near and immediate are the same thing. In the near or even kind of distant future, because we're really not looking at a return to pitching until 2024 for him, unfortunately. I do want to take a second and apologize for the general snuffiness and the head cold. It's not just recording 2 of these in a row. It is a bit of a head cold that probably has me sounding a bit off. I hope all of you are avoiding the fun of, if your kids are back in school, all the germs hitting at once. It's a good time. I swear. So here's the thing. I'm assuming this is a postseason squad. I'm just going to, until otherwise, I'm saying that they are in the postseason. The schedule sets them up well. They are playing well. Everything is coming up Millhouse, as it were. So let's assume this is a playoff squad. Who are your top 4 starters? The top 3, you kind of have to worry about it first, right? And I think looking at this team, would you say for the postseason it goes, here's the other question, is it Bieber, McKenzie, Quantrill, or do you think it is McKenzie, Bieber, Quantrill? I think most people would agree it should still be Bieber 1, but you have an advantage over a lot of teams when that's your top 2. It's a nice situation to have, right? And then is it you're hoping Savali comes back to be your 4th starter, that he'll come back and pitch at the end of this month? Who's the guy you're really counting on? I think that's where I kind of go, ugh. Like, I'm not sure with this team. I'm not sure who that 4th option is. I'm not sure who the next player up is. I guess Savali. If the postseason began today, who looking at this team, let's just assume that Kirk McCarty is the added arm, so he's not here. We assume that the Gaddis spot would be filled by Savale. Who is the rest of this bullpen? Like who? Classic 99s: Stefan, Sandlin, Henches. Great, and I didn't even mention Henches when I was talking about the great parts of this pen. That's what's so crazy about it. Morgan, Shaw, Niel. Shaw's a massive weak link, but he's going to be there. People keep saying, when is he going to go away? He's not. He probably will be back next year, let's be honest. they're not going to exercise his option, but I guarantee you he gets another $2 to $3 million to come back next year, because it certainly seems like Tito's coming back, and that's his buddy. That is his guy. So Shaw will be back next year. It's probably going to be just like this past year. It's going to be after they go through, the rule. And I know there was no Rule 5 this year, but it was after it was announced there would be no Rule 5. They won't exercise his option. They'll use that roster spot, and then they'll figure out later on, either by making some trades, hopefully, to finally upgrade the roster through some trades. Again, I like where this roster is, but you can still tweak it a little bit and make it a lot better. But, so you already talked about all those fun pieces, the multiple dynamic spots. Imagine adding Cody Morris to that mix. As a postseason arm in the pen. They are set up to be, and people make fun of the Central. People make fun of, whoever comes out of there like it's a bye. It's a rollover. And I'm going to insist, this is not a team you want to face. You do not want to face a team with a good bullpen. A team that can shorten the game down. A team that's going to make a ton of contact. This is not a team I think anyone wants to face. I don't think there's an advantage to facing them. Yeah, Houston is tough, but right now, and the Yankees have the big names, but they're a team that's scuffling. Would you rather face New York, or would you rather face Cleveland? I think that is actually, there's room for debate there. Continuing to talk about it, what is the bench if this team makes the postseason? We assume that the guys who have been there all year, we don't need to go through the entire lineup, but, in terms of the bench guys, you got Owen Miller, Luke Maile. Who are the other guys who are going to fill in? And, Miller is almost like a borderline starter, so if you assume Maile, no, he's not a fighter, Maile, who are the other three bench spots? I think Ty Freeman's probably earned it by now, right? So who are the other two? Is it Will Benson? Is he going to be your fourth outfielder? Looking across, I think so. So who then makes it? Is it Palacios? Is it Clement? Is it Nolan Jones? Who do they get to be that kind of final player who can fill in at a few different spots and play? It's kind of interesting to debate and consider who's it going to be when this team makes the postseason. Because, again, I stand that they will make the postseason. And then at the end of the day, enjoy them. To steal words from our immoral and immortal are both wrong. I got brain fog from this cold. Can't think of what we'd want to say. The correct word I was going for there. But in terms of, our very memorable, we'll say, owner, enjoy them. This is a team that is young. They are fun. They are loaded with stars. And they're... Here we go. It is, as of recording this, 15th of September. If I did the old song, 30 days past September, it's right there. We're halfway through this month. They still have a 3-game lead in the division. We're talking about essentially 2-3 weeks left now. 1, 2, 3 weeks left. They're up 3 games. Take some time and enjoy a baseball team that is playing really well, that has a lot of fun players, a lot of very fun young players you're going to get to enjoy for years. The Guardians had that, back when the Indians had that great run under Terry, and then last few years not as fun. I say it's time to look past the name stuff. And if you're bothered by it and you're mad by it, okay. You're allowed to be mad. I'm not saying give it up, but don't. If you love baseball, don't spite yourself because of a name. You can still be PO'd, be mad, totally be mad. That's fine. That is your choice. I'm not saying you can't be mad. That is your choice. But don't let your anger let you miss out on a fun time as a baseball fan. If you love baseball, you're going to love this team. I've been Jeff Ellis. This has been the Locked On Guardians podcast for Friday. Remember to rate and review, download daily. It helps. Subscribe on the iTunes. And, my one promise has been I'll respond to every comment. I'm going to give up on that, okay? I'm going to respond to comments that I feel like I have things to say and or are nice, that are fun. I'm not going to wade into the murk. So there's no point to it, right? There's just no point to such things. So that's not going to happen. Thank you all. Again, last week we cracked the top 10 podcasts in the network. That's huge. And every month we are growing exponentially. I have that new co-host information soon. Thank you to the best fans there are, honestly. And I deal with less negativity than any fan base, and that is a tribute to each and every one of you. And as I end every show, go Guardians, go.